Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Industry Leader segment presented by Market One. My guest today is Crystal Kwon, the Principal of Front and Center Communications. Crystal is synonymous in the Canadian PR landscape. She was voted 30 under 30 in PR in Canada, one of BC's most influential women by BC Magazine. She is an award-winning consultant with over a decade of working experience with some of the world's largest and best-known brands. Crystal, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So are we. Crystal, so I think to start off, let's talk about internal communication, right? So as we know, our people are the most important asset to any business. With the new reality, how should companies speak to their staff now in terms of internal comms with corporate communication people and with senior leadership? How does that work and what should people be looking to do?
That's such a good question. I think sometimes people really forget about internal communications, but you might have not had a plan in place, but this needs to be a priority. I think, with offices all going to work from home now, maybe permanently, this isn't the way that we've built our business. And I think leaders really need to think about how do I stay in touch with the team really. So I think first things first is just really thinking about what is your message, right? For a lot of people, it's scary times and they need some reassurance, whether that's is my job safe or is the business doing well or even coping with, working from home and the challenges around that while, living in a pandemic. I think leaders need to first think about what is their message and how can they really portray confidence, comfort, that there is a clear path ahead for them and for the team moving forward. And then I think secondly, it really needs to be around what's the cadence and the way that you communicate. And I think in times like this, it's really about over communicating, being present and being visible. And being visible now might be actively chiming in on a Slack channel or sending out a weekly email that might have come from a different team member. But for this time being, it could come from the CEO. And just making sure that there is some sort of really clear understanding and a bit of a schedule around when and how you communicate to the team. Probably now it's better to err on the side of caution and over communicate versus not, and really just making sure that it's not you just sharing your message, but taking time to listen to your team and figure out what their concerns and how you can best support them.
Yeah, I love the idea of listening to your team because we feel like, okay, I've laid the message, it's all done, we can now move on. It's like, but what are the questions our team has and how can we help them make sure that they're feeling comfortable and assured? So with internal comms, working that way, how should we now speak to our customers or even a couple of clients are in the retail, speak to retail investors on a constant basis. So how should you speak to your customers or people that invest in your company to give them the assurance that they need to be like, okay, this company knows what they're doing. They have the protocols in place and I feel comfortable supporting them.
For sure. And I think I would default again to listening, right? Because first things first is you need to figure out what they're worried about or what they want to know. And really depending on the organization, whether you're a for-profit or a charity or, whatever size you might be, you're going to have different stakeholders and different audiences. And the message you need to share with them really is different, right? Like some people, it's about security and safety. Others is about like revenue and culture or, what does the next 6 months look like or how long is our runway? So I think first you need to figure out who you're talking to and really listen and think about what is the concerns that they may have. The second thing I would really suggest is that, in this time, sometimes actions are so much more powerful than words, right? It's so much more impactful and you really can't message your way in or out of a situation. So a lot of companies, they need to be making changes to their business, whether that's changes to policy or pivoting into new services or really just stepping up and re-looking at the whole model. They need to really not just think about how can I communicate, but really what can I do and what changes can I make? And for a lot of companies who have just kind of gone dark, this is actually really not the time to do that. And, there's a lot of research and studies that show that brands that continue communicating or marketing or advertising, they're the first ones to bounce back once this is behind us. So you can't just turn things off and, kind of just wait this out.
So based on, showing action, do you have an example of a company that you thought, hey, I like what they did with action rather than words?
Yeah. A client of ours is actually Vessi. They're a waterproof D2C e-commerce company. It was really Friday, the mid-March, when things got serious around COVID. If you can remember, that's when, the NBA and so Tom Hanks got it, and then it became real, right? And I think on that Monday afternoon, Vessi launched a campaign where they were giving away 1,000 pairs of shoes to Canadian healthcare workers and then 1,000 pairs of shoes to US healthcare workers. So it wasn't just sending out that stock email that everyone got around, the health and safety of everyone is of utmost importance. Like, they really moved and put things into action, and super proud of the team and the work that was done there, because sometimes it's not really about perfecting a strategy, but it's how quickly can you show momentum and movement and be a leader in that space.
And what was the reaction from the general public once you launched that?
It was really strong. I mean, based on just anecdotal comments that we saw on social, even to like pretty hard metrics now to the website, I think people really started to understand the company and like the values they stand for. We actually ended up launching a number of different initiatives with them. So we were really quick. And once that wrapped, we're always pivoting to different ideas and really going to their community to ask, how can we give back? And in the end, we ended up doing about 6 different initiatives. And while footwear has been down about 40 to 70%, they were actually able to see 3x to their business,
wow.
Which is huge. And I think it really was a proof point that communities and companies can really pivot in towards like a business of doing good, and that's something that's really resonating right now.
I think over the last few years, we've seen that successful businesses are the ones that have strong values in check. I think that's only going to get stronger now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So speaking of Vessi, they're an e-commerce brand primarily. With e-commerce sort of blowing up in the last few months, do you think now that people are adapting to it more and more, that independent businesses should be moving more online as well?
100%. I think, in a strange way, COVID has been a major accelerator for innovation. You look at cities and governments and companies, everything that couldn't be done before, it has now happened, right? And that's really the upside of this, really tough times. And I think that a big takeaway for any company is that COVID has been a major catalyst for e-commerce, right? Just look at what happened or what Shopify has announced this week, right? First of all, they've become the highest valued public company in Canada, which is amazing. And I believe they only went public about 5 years ago, right? And I saw a news article the other day where it's not just companies like Heinz and Loblaw that are signing up, but they just rolled out many new features around their business, really, that will support small and medium-sized enterprises. So get on board if you haven't already. Like, look at the difference of a company that may not have done a lot on e-commerce, but had it up and going as a channel. They would have been able to rebound so much more quickly. And in sometimes that would have saved jobs and made a big difference. So definitely think it's not a trend, and it's really just an indication of what's to come.
The thing about e-commerce is that it's not very difficult to set up, right? It's the way Shopify has built their backend is it's not overly complicated. You could, there's lots of tutorials, lots of things you can do. There's lots of resources out there that can just get you set up pretty easily. With e-commerce being the way it is and people working more virtual, do you think that brands like Shopify announcing that they're going to have a very remote team moving forward. Twitter going to be doing that. Do you think that's going to happen more and more, or do you think it's more of a temporary thing put in place?
You know what? That's such a good question. And so much to unpack there, right? Because a lot of those tech companies are set up in a way where their employees can work from home, right? A lot of companies can't, or a lot of people just can't do the like living situation, whether it's they might not have the physical space or they might have, kids and dogs running around, right? And so there's that component. I also think that it's a bit short-sighted if companies just want to go full remote right away, unless they have a bit of a track record where they've tested it out. So like humans are social, right? And we love that interaction. And I think some of the best interactions and ideas really start like around the water cooler or talking to someone who's not even in your department, but you guys are just both making a coffee and making small talk. And I really hope that it's not going to be a permanent thing moving forward. But at the same time, there's a lot of advantages as well. So I hope that it ends up being a bit of a hybrid model.
I think the idea of fully remote it can be appealing, but I think when you need to have those creative meetings, you need to be there in person, like hammer that out. You just get more out of it. I feel there's more output. But
Totally.
let's see what happens.
Exactly. It's also will be so interesting in Vancouver specifically. Like we have no in North America. I think we have the lowest commercial real estate vacancy, no office space. Our company is going to be investing so much into these like big, fancy, lovely office spaces. I think that's a trend or something that will continue to play out over the next 5 to 10 years.
My last question, Crystal, is really about it's on building brands and leveraging your tools for good. So you spoke to me about Vessi, about supporting the healthcare workers. Do you think that if you have the ability to leverage your resources, that you should try to do that more and more now, because people really love reading about this, and those stories make them feel like better about humanity and make them feel good about the situation as a whole?
Totally. So yeah, like in tough times, people look for hope and good news, right? And I think what's been so interesting is if you do an audit of all of like brands and marketing activity over the last couple of months, every brand from the small like mom and pops to the giants, they've all done something. And in fact, if you haven't done something and you're like a medium size, you kind of get called out. And so I think that it's almost become where having a CSR or a give get back component was like a added bonus. Moving forward, I really think consumers it's going to be like the expectation, right? It's going to be table stakes. If you build a brand, it's going to be a bit of a cornerstone to, your values really. And I think that that's really shifted over the last couple of months. Consumers now more than ever have that expectation, and it'll be something that they really need to bake into their program versus having it kind of as an afterthought.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what happens in the next few weeks with things opening up again, and how brands are going to adjust to even marketing their products, or getting restaurants opening up saying, hey, we're open for business. How are you going to come in? One thing that that came to mind just now was, have you seen the story about the cafe in Germany that have those like straw hats that you put on, and then it's like it has a distancing thing? I wonder if more businesses are going to start to be creative about those kind of things and make conversations out of it, because then it's like, well, the next time I'm going to go to Germany, I will want to go to that cafe and put that cap on, right? So it's how can they create more memorable experience for people to want to come out to those sorts of establishments?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, people are being so creative, right? Every business owner or company head has thought about what can I do differently, and so focusing on what's good and what's like positive coming out of this. I do think that there's different challenges ahead of us. You're not just thinking about how do I make a business profitable or how do I engage my team. You really need to figure out how do you stand out, right? now more than ever, like media consumption, social media, like the time spent on those platforms have gone up. That means that brands, like, that landscape just got really even more competitive, right? And so I think brands need to think outside the box, and companies need to really figure out, like, how does my story stand out? And that will be a new challenge in the weeks and months to come.
And those are challenges I know that people like yourself and myself enjoy relishing. So it makes our jobs a lot more interesting and a lot more challenging for the better.
For sure, for sure.
Crystal, thanks again so much. This is very insightful and very enlightening. And I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about this.
For sure. It was so much fun. Hope to do it again.